Hello everyone, it's Shannon here for Hero Arts. In today's video, we're going to create this mermaid card featuring the June My Monthly Hero Kit. I will also demonstrate how to watercolor with reactive inks. All the images are actually colored with reactive inks that are part of the included palette ink pad. I'm going to start today's card with a A2 panel of Bristol paper. This is Bristol Smooth from Strathmore. I prefer to watercolor on Bristol paper, but you could also use watercolor paper if that's what you have. I'm going to heat emboss, so I did apply some anti-static powder. Now I'm going to ink up my images in embossing and Watermark ink, stamp them onto my Bristol paper, and then I'm going to heat emboss with some black detail embossing powder. I love the look of this, but it also works as kind of a resist and just makes it easier to watercolor because your colors kind of stay in their little wells created by the embossing powder, and I really prefer this method. So now after I pour on the embossing powder, I'm just going to heat set with my heat tool, and then we'll be ready to do our watercoloring. So I do not have the included palette ink pad, but I do have all the reactive inks in mini form here that I'm going to use the same colors that are included in the pad, and I'm going to start with Berry Smoothie, then Grape Slush, and then Blue Hawaii. I just pressed them out onto a laminated piece of paper. That's going to work as my palette, and now I'm going to start coloring. I am using the water brush that's included in the kit. I do have a towel handy because water brushes just release a lot of water, so I often have to go back to that towel and kind of dry up my brush a little bit here. Started with that Berry Smoothie, colored about a little bit over halfway of the hair, and now I'm coloring this section of hair with Grape Slush all the way up to the root. And then once I kind of blend these two together, the Berry Smoothie and the Grape Slush where they meet, I will add in a third color, which is Blue Hawaii. And this Blue Hawaii I'm actually going to layer right on top of some of that Grape Slush to kind of create this indigo color, or a really kind of dark blue purple color, and that's going to finish off my gradation for that section of hair. I'm visually just dividing the hair up into sections. I'm working on another section here. Started with the Blue Hawaii, then the Grape Slush, and then I'm going to finish up with the Berry Smoothie all the way to the end, creating another gradation. Here you can see I'm working on another section of hair, same three combo of inks here, and then for this section I actually skipped the Blue Hawaii and just did the Grape Slush and the Berry Smoothie. I do that in some sections just to create more contrast. If it looks like it's going to be blue next to blue, then I might skip the blue and go straight to the Grape Slush instead, just to have more contrast so you can really see these sections of hair. So I repeated that process for the other half of the hair. Now we're going to move on to the tail. For the tail, I'm going to be using Blue Raspberry and Blue Hawaii again. I'm going to start with the Blue Hawaii, and that's going to be kind of my dark here for this combo. So I'm going to start at her waist and then color a gradation with that blue all the way down about 2/3 of the way. Then I start to work in that Blue Raspberry, and that's going to really kind of make this tail look green and teal. It's just going to have a really pretty look. I do go back to that Blue Hawaii to add in shadows and make the tail look more rounded, and I'll even pull up some color at where it would be a highlight just to make it a little bit lighter. Now we're going to move to the tail of her tail, and I'm going to start with Blue Raspberry again. Or I'm sorry, start with Blue Hawaii again, then I'll move to Blue Raspberry and kind of fade it out so it has a gradation. I basically want to create an ombre between these two colors where the Blue Hawaii is the darkest. So I'm just going back and adding more color just to create a more vibrant and a colorful tail here. So layering it on, especially where parts of the tail is a little bit drier, so I can actually layer on that color. And once I finish up this tail here, I will move on to her skin. Now I chose to use Splash for her skin because it's one of the colors that's in the ink pad and we haven't used it yet. And also I just think it's kind of a cool look, or different look, to do the mermaid skin in blue. So I'm super watering down this splash, so it's very, very light blue here, and just doing kind of a base coat over all of her skin, her hands, arms, stomach, everywhere, her face. Then after I add that base coat, then I'll go in with a very dry brush and pick up some of that splash and add that intense splash anywhere I think would be in shadow. So kind of along her arms, her stomach, where the hair would kind of overlap with their stomach and create a shadow. And then after I get some of that darker splashdown or that intense splashdown, I'll then kind of blend it out a little bit with a clean, just a tiny bit wet brush, just kind of soften the edge so it's not a hard edge and you have a nice gradation. So one color for her skin, but just by using less water, we're getting different shades. So now that I've finished her skin, I'm just going to take a little bit of that berry smoothie and color in her lips, and even add a little bit of splash to her lips to just kind of make it a little bit more purple. And then I used a little bit of that berry smoothie for her cheeks. Now we're going to move on to the seaweed here. So now for the seaweed, I'm going to use the same colors that I used for her tail, which is blue raspberry and blue Hawaii. Starting with that blue raspberry and just kind of painting or coloring the kind of upper 2/3 of the seaweed with that color, and then I'll move to the blue Hawaii, and that again is going to be my dark here, so I'm adding it at the base of the plant, and then I just kind of blend it out a little bit, sometimes picking up color here and there to make the seaweed look a little bit more wavy, like there's a little bit more movement than instead of just a flat gradation. Now that I finished the seaweed, I'm going to move on to the little shell here with the pearl. Starting with the shell, I'm just going to color a base there with the grape slush. Then I'll move to berry smoothie to color the inside of the shell, I guess it's a clam. I don't know. Do pearls come in clams? And after I do the berry smoothie, then I'll go to that blue Hawaii and color over the grape slush with the blue Hawaii to make that kind of indigo color again. I really like that color, especially for the shell. And then for the outer part of the shell specifically. And then for the interior of the shell, I just added a little bit more of berry smoothie and sometimes a little bit of grape slush, just kind of darken it up. I did not color the pearl because we're going to use the gems that are included in the kit for the pearl later. So now I went ahead and die cut those out, and now we're going to move on creating our background. I have an A2 panel of Lapis paper here, and I'm going to ink blend on the lower left corner with blue Hawaii. I grabbed out my big ink pad here because I'm going to do a lot of ink blending, and I'm just going to create kind of this angled gradation with that blue Hawaii. Then we're going to move to Grape Slush, again another color that's in that palette ink pad, and just ink blend the lower third of that corner with that Grape Slush to create this really pretty gradation. Now I've kind of temporarily placed my images on my panel to figure out where I want my sentiment to go. Once I figured it out, I picked it up with my Misty, and I'm just going to stamp this in Intens-ified black ink in the corner. Now that I stamped my sentiment, we're basically ready to put this card together. I have an A2 top folding white card base, and the first thing I'm going to do is just glue down my ink blended panel onto that card front. And I'll put a platform for my die cutting machine on top just to kind of weight it down while that glue sets up a little bit. Then I'll move on to the mermaid and the clam shell. I'm going to add some foam adhesive to the backside of the mermaid, and then take a piece of foam adhesive, double it up by folding it on itself, and add that little strip to the shell. This way I can overlap it over the mermaid, so it has that extra dimension so I can go over the mermaid easily. Now for the seaweeds, I'm going to actually glue them flat, or glue them to the card front themselves, so I'm not going to use any foam adhesive for those. Once I have them figured out where I want them to go, I'm going to add a little foam adhesive, liquid adhesive, but only to the very bottom portion of the seaweed. That allows the top parts to kind of lift away from the backing of the card front, and they just have a little bit of kind of faux dimension. It's a really nice way to get a little dimension, but without actually having to use foam adhesive. So now I went ahead and removed the backing on my foam adhesive on my mermaid, stuck her down, decided to glue down one part of the seaweed a little because it was sticking up a little bit too much, making it hard to read sentiment. And then I removed the backing on the shell and stuck that down. Lastly, I finished off with one of the pearls, just centered it right over that stamped pearl, and now our card is complete. I'll hold it to the camera so you can get a good look at all the details in this card. I love the way the watercoloring looks. The reactive inks are so vibrant and so pretty, and they blend so beautifully together. I also love all the ombres from her hair to the tail to the seaweed. I think it just adds a lot of interest. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you have any questions about the products I used, please check out the links below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.